Welcome to another episode of The Unseen Paranormal, where some of the scariest things are unseen. I'm your host, Eric Freeman. Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. Today we are chatting with paranormal investigator and author Sin Shrader Hill. Sin is the author of Whispers in the Dark and They're Speaking, Are You Listening?, where she chronicles her journey through the paranormal and the incredible evidence that her and her team have captured. Sin is also a founding member of Elk Valley Paranormal and has investigated many locations around Tennessee and the U.S. You can find her book on Amazon, Kindle, and wherever fine books are sold. Welcome to the show, Sin. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Oh, not a problem. Thanks for coming on. So, especially paranormal investigators, always like to ask this question. How did you come to get into the paranormal and to create Elk Valley Paranormal?
So I've always been interested in it from the time I was very little, from strange happenings, from sleep paralysis to hearing things, seeing things out of the corner of my eye, being afraid of it at that point growing up and not really understanding what was going on. I didn't realize that I was a little bit sensitive and I just didn't get it. So I developed panic attacks over this and couldn't figure out why I was panicking. But later on, my dad died suddenly in 2001, just after 9/11. He and my mom had owned an auto parts place in Fayetteville, Tennessee, just off the square, for 40-something years. And I was a daddy's girl. So when I lost him, and we lost him, it was devastating. It was like this big, strong guy dies. He's not even... he's late 60s. He's not even in his 70s. And so it was really sudden. So it took me a little while, but I decided I really wanted to see if I could reach out to him. A friend of mine, actually my cousin, had a group come down and investigate her business, and I asked her who she used, and it was Ghost Hunters of Southern Tennessee out of McMinnville. James Jones and Wayne Baker were the founders. So I reached out to them. They came down and used me as the trigger object. So basically, I stood in the dark while they filmed me, and I just talked to my dad, hoping that he would answer, even though I wasn't hearing anything. You could hear footsteps once in a while. You could see shadows that, was that Dad? I'm not sure. All this stuff. Anyway, about halfway through the investigation, they took a break. So the founders went outside. My husband and I were standing inside just talking about, do you think it's real? Did you feel anything? All that kind of stuff. And the other two people had sat down to check their equipment. They were over on the other side of the room, and a rock got thrown between us. And it was as if something was saying, nobody needs to take a break. I was trying to talk to you guys. Let's get going again. So they run outside to get the founders, and they come back in. They're like, oh, yeah, no, we can't take a break now. Let's get going. Interestingly enough, all of their equipment, they caught a couple of EVPs, and I'll tell you about those in just a second, but interestingly enough, the only place that their K2s lit up, and they had lasers set up, they had a little bit of everything, but their K2s only hit in my dad's old office, right where his desk chair sat.
Wow. That's
the only place. And again, there were no utilities on and had not been on for at least 2 years prior to this.
Right.
The EVPs they caught, this was an old building that they had made into an auto parts place. But back in the late 1800s, the first floor of this building had been a poultry slaughterhouse. There were still the concrete vats that they had used to boil the turkeys and all that kind of stuff. So the EVP they caught from the basement was actual clucking. So we had turkey ghosts in the basement, and the only other EVP they caught was a strange holy mackerel, which my dad never said. So it was somebody that worked either back in that time or while it was an ice cream factory. We're not really sure. But those were the two EVPs they caught, and I caught the bug. They asked me to join them, and I became their case manager for about a year and a half. Now, during that time, I was always thinking about, I really want my own group. I really want my own group. I had the perfect, or what I thought was the perfect name, because my favorite thing to do in the group turned out to be finding the voices with electronic voice phenomenon. I love finding the EVPs. Loved working with it. Loved working with audio. And the name I came up with, since I've lived in the Elk Valley area all the time, was EVP, Elk Valley Paranormal. So that became my baby, and my co-founder came across from that group with me. I trained him for the two founders, and we ended up founding Elk Valley Paranormal and going from there. So we've done a little bit of investigating around this area, northern Alabama, over into the Chattanooga area and Nashville area. So it's been fun.
And a big place that y'all investigated a lot and kind of become the team for them is the old Fayetteville Hospital.
Yeah, and we ended up being the host team for public hunts and private hunts for the owner. Unfortunately, the owner has it closed now, or we would still be doing that. But he's working on more cleanup. I know a lot of people know that there was asbestos involved and mold and all that kind of stuff, dust, of course. But that place is the most haunted structure I've ever been in, ever. So, and you can go to my website, elkvalleyparanormal.com, and actually look at the evidence. And we've got two videos from there. One is on the first floor, and we call it the creeper. We don't really know exactly where this thing comes from. We don't think it was ever a person, but this thing, to me, looks like a combination between the Michelin Man and the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. He's like a combination of that. And he's about 3.5 feet tall. So we've got a still of him, an IR still. So you can look at that picture and then go back and look at the video, because this thing moves quick. He does not want to be on camera. And so you've got to look at the still first to see what you're looking for, and you can finally see him. But he does move really quickly. The other video was taken on the second floor, which is where most of the experiences we have ever had in the hospital have taken place, good and bad. And they want you to see the orb that comes out of the door and goes back into a wall. But if you're looking down at the floor, you'll see something trying to manifest. And then as you're watching that, you'll see something else shoot across the hallway on the floor. So it's pretty creepy to watch. And I encourage you to go, again, look at the website and look under the evidence under the hospital and look at those.
And that hospital was open back in the 1930s and operated until the early 2000s?
It closed the day before 9/11. Actually, it's kind of a strange date, but it closed on 9/10/2001.
Yeah, that is strange, but there's a huge long history there. And thinking of a hospital, of all the people who were born there and died there, and maybe some of them that were born and died there.
Exactly. And all of the wrecks that came through and all of the DOAs and, the whole thing. What's one of the strangest things about that hospital? There's so many strange things about the hospital. There's 5 basements in the thing, but none of them connect because it was built on from year after year after year. When it first started, it was not a hospital. It was a college. It was a teaching college. And some of my ancestors, great aunts and uncles, actually went there to be teachers. And they were in some of the clubs that college. It was called Bright College in Fayetteville. Eventually, that moved over in one of the Carolinas to become part of the Presbyterian college system. Well, it was already part of the Presbyterian college system, but it went on and just stayed actually as a church school, teaching teachers and all that kind of stuff. And that's when the old hospital moved down from the hill and then over onto that current site and started building from there. Not too far away, about 2 to 3 blocks away, is this huge cemetery called Rose Hill. Some of the people that went to the college back then actually had meetings in the cemetery. We're not really sure what their intentions were, but they were called the Unlucky 333. So we kind of think there was something underhanded involved. We're not positive, but there were 3 men that were in this club that went to this college. We think 2 of them are still there.
Yeah.
So a lot of bad things happen up on the second floor. And there's a lot of shadow people on the second floor. You can see strange orbs of different colors on the second floor. And you have to be really careful about audio up there because there are broken windows. You're down in a section of town that tends not to sleep. It's not really a safe part of town. And so there's a lot of parties going on all the time and a lot of cars going up. So you've got to always make sure that you're not seeing a car headlight instead of, an orb or something that may be paranormal, because, you can't say everything is paranormal. You have to debunk everything possible, everything. And then you still can't say, once you've debunked everything possible, you still can't say, yes, this was paranormal, because we don't really know what else there is. We just say, yeah, that was strange. I think it might have been a person, but I can't be 100%. That kind of thing. So we got tons of stories from the old hospital.
Yeah, one of the ones that kind of is prevalent, kind of caught my attention and was featured heavily on Ghost Adventures when they did their investigation there a few years ago, was the spirit of a little girl that is kind of reported by everybody that goes there.
Right. And a little girl is reported at a lot of places, so you got to be careful with, is that Mary, or is that something that's saying it's Mary just to get your attention so you can be kind of reeled into something else. But this little girl, there's actually 2 there. There's 2 Marys, and there's another little girl up there that she was molested, so it's a bad story. But that particular person was actually corroborated with a person I know on the sheriff's department. He was like, "Oh yeah, I remember the story of that little girl," and it was kind of oh, okay, good. Because you always like to get validated. You always try to get validated with a story that you find you've worked on, and then someone on the outside says, "Oh yeah, I can tell you the rest of that story." So that was always good to hear.
Yeah.
But Mary, the one you're talking about now, there was the respiratory therapist was talking about his Mary up on the 3rd floor. There is another little girl named Mary that stays in the maternity ward, and that's the one that we are more interactive with. She is the one that likes to hold hands, and she usually picks the big, strong guy, someone that she can feel safe with walking through the hospital. She normally stays with a nurse down on that end that likes to enjoy her coffee. So people tend to leave coffee packets and creamer packets for her. So it's just, you get to know your resident haunts and what they like and that kind of thing. But yeah, the Mary we know is sweet. The Mary that he was talking about, we have not gotten to meet.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of Ghost Adventures, but I like to do my research for the show. So that was the only show that I could find that did an episode there at the hospital, and
Yeah.
which is intriguing because of all the activity that y'all have got, and hospitals in general typically draw a huge crowd, especially for the TV crowd,
Right.
and there's not. I mean, you hear about Waverly Hills and some of these other hospitals, but there's really not that many throughout the country that allow people to come and investigate.
Exactly. And, interestingly enough, you're speaking about Ghost Adventures. When they came in with a story, and it was nothing to do with anything. And we said, well, you can try to talk to Mary in the maternity ward. And of course, that oh, no, we've got this, we'll do this. And then someone else mentioned Mary. And then a third person mentioned Mary. And finally he goes, you know what? Maybe we should see if there's a Mary here. So they ditched their script. They had a whole script written. So they ditched the script and actually went in and actually investigated that hospital. So it ended up being a better episode than it would have been.
Right.
Now, some of the stuff they saw, the basement, the shadow, that could have been someone walking past on the outside.
Yeah, that's what I thought too when I saw it.
Yeah. So you'll never convince me that was a true shadow person. It's just too convenient for someone to walk by that basement door. And the thing that got me, the thing that I kind of cringed at and kind of rolled my eyes when he asked the little girl if she wanted candy. You never. I mean, we grew up. Don't take candy from strangers. Don't ever take candy from a stranger. And then he asked a little girl that he'd never met if she wanted candy, and I thought, oh, she's not going to come talk to him. But,
right.
You just never know what's going to happen. But I was actually impressed a little bit with their investigation of the old hospital. I will say that they left a day or day and a half early and didn't finish everything, just kind of let their camera people finish up, taking shots and stuff. Because, for a 45-minute show, they usually go somewhere for 3 or 4 days.
Right.
Well, once they had everything they needed, they went on and left everything behind. So it was just kind of like did you really want to know about the place, or just kind of felt like a slap in the face is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of most of the paranormal TV shows because of things like that. And I've heard horror stories from some people that I know that work in the TV business and in that, paranormal TV business. But I think the one good thing they do with Ghost Adventures being so popular and the other shows, Ghost Nation, Ghost Hunters, I think they draw attention to these historical places and help them, by because now if the hospital ever does open back up for paranormal investigations, and I'm sure they probably used this before. If not, they should have. They can slap that badge on there saying "As Seen on Ghost Adventures," and it'll draw people in. Yeah, to help them make money to keep the place up and to keep the place going and for more people to enjoy.
Exactly. And hopefully he will be opening up again to let us do these tours, because that place is fascinating.
Yeah, I would love to come down there and check it out.
I would love for you to. That would be awesome.
It would be a lot of fun. One of the things that comes to mind is I talked to a psychic medium a while back, and one of the things that she said to me I never really thought about, but it makes sense with hospitals and with homes. And she told me, have you ever noticed that every place that we investigate that is supposedly haunted, or the majority of them, 90% of them, are places where people sleep? And I thought,
oh, they are.
Yeah, I never thought about that before for whatever reason after investigating, researching for so many years. But yeah, like hospitals, homes, that's most of what you get, hauntings in. So it's pretty interesting correlation.
Well, and when you're asleep, that's when you are most susceptible to someone coming, and that's when you're at your most suggestive. I'll say it that way. So really, that's a lot of what my next book is about. It's not goodbye, signs from beyond. I've had several friends reach out to me with dreams they have had, and the dreams are so real about maybe a father coming back and checking on his little girl, or a mother reaching out. My co-founder actually had his grandmother come to him in a dream, and she had just died. And she came to a dream, and she put her hand on him and said, "Sean, it's okay. I got him with me. It's okay." And Sean wakes up and crying. And then he finds out in the next 5 minutes, his mother calls him and says, your granddaddy just died.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So things like that. In this next book, I've got a pet section where pets have actually come back and just kind of checked in with us, and or signs that we see. You know, when we think about our loved ones, a lot of people think of, if they see a red bird, that's one of their ancestors. Or
Right.
if you see a feather on the ground, or a penny even on the ground, that's signs from heaven, right?
Right.
So that's what this next book is about. One of the stories in it was actually, oh my gosh, I could tell you so many. One of them was a friend of mine was a camp director, and he taught camp kids how to ride horses. And so on the last night of the camp, they were doing a horse ride. They had a rain, and one of the trees had fallen across the trail, so they had to go around, had to find a different trail. They got around that tree, and then on a little bit up the trail, something else had happened. They had to find a different trail. Well, by that time, it's starting to get dark, and this guy has 15 kids behind him riding horses. They've never been on horses before this camp. So he's nervous about them. All of a sudden, he looks up and sees this black dog. It was like, where did this black dog come from? He looked at it, and something clicked in his head. It was like the dog, and this sounds crazy, but it's like the dog mentally spoke to him telepathically, and he just knew to follow him. So he followed this dog and kept following him. They finally came out into the clearing that they should have been at, the one that they were looking at in the first place, trying to find. So he looks around, and the dog's gone. All right. They get back to regular camp, and the guy, they've already sent out a search party. They're 3 hours late. They don't know where the kids are with this scout. They don't know. He comes in 3 hours late, and he looks shaken up. And one of the people asked him, what happened out there? He said, it was the weirdest thing. I was completely turned around in that forest on the trail. Had to turn around twice. Didn't know, we're trying to get through to the campsite. And all of a sudden, there's this black dog, and I followed him, and he got us to where we're supposed to be. And they were like, you saw the black dog? You saw him? What had happened is years and years and years before, a man that had owned the campground property that they had turned into a campground for underprivileged kids, he had been blind. He had a seeing eye dog that was a black German Shepherd. The seeing eye dog made sure that he was always safe. That seeing eye dog still shows up to this day to help people that are lost. Isn't that incredible?
That is incredible. And that's awesome that you're putting a section about pets, because here and there I've heard stories throughout the years of ghost pets, spirits of animals coming back, but it's not something that you hear a lot about.
Right.
And I've always been intrigued by those stories. And I believe one of my dogs that I had to put down a couple of years ago because he had cancer, I believe he comes back and visits. I'll catch glimpses of a white dog. He was a Jack Russell. And I have 9 dogs. So, but when they're outside, I'll hear what sounds like nails on the kitchen floor, and I'll go
Oh,
look, and yeah, all my dogs are outside, none of them are in the kitchen. But I'll see
uh-huh.
him. I have a bar island in the middle of my kitchen, and I'll think that I see one of the dogs walk around the corner of that island, just a quick glimpse of a white dog,
Nice.
and yeah, the only white dog I have is 140 pounds. And so the dog that I'm talking about, Chase, was a smaller dog because he was a Jack Russell. And so I'll look around, the corner of the island, and there's nothing there. So yeah, that's interesting. I love the pet stories.
I do too. I do too. And the fact that you heard his nails on the floor
Yeah,
and everything. I mean, it's like they just kind of check on us. That was a happy part of their life. When he lived with you, that was a happy part of his life.
yeah,
So I truly believe they check in on us. Part of this book is also going to be about people on their deathbed. You know how you'll come into a room and say your grandmother's not doing very well, and all of a sudden she's talking about her mother and her grandmother and her great uncle, and they're all in the room with her, except they're not.
right,
What do you make of that? I mean, have they come back to help her
right.
go on to the next part? Are they there to comfort her? Are they angels? What exactly is this? So that's, I've got so many stories, so many incredible stories from some are nurses that have worked in the field for quite a while, and they've seen a lot, the patient standpoint, a lot from their own standpoint. They'll be sitting at their desk doing notes, and they'll see things out of the corner of their eyes. So hospitals and assisted living homes and places like that are just full of stories. They're full of them.
Yeah.
So I just think it's so interesting.
Well, and what you don't know about me, but my listeners have heard me talk about this, and I've told lots of stories of my own, is that I have worked in medicine for 20 years. So it's interesting that you
Okay.
bring up the nurses and stuff, because I started out for the first 5 years of my medical career working in nursing homes.
Oh
Yeah,
wow.
I've had lots of experience with what you're talking about with patients and stuff. And there's a this story that's getting more and more popular. And I have to, when I guest on other people's show, I have to tell the story. But I had an encounter with what only I can call the angel of death, because I can't think of anything else to call it. But I've told it on here, and so yeah, I've had quite a few experiences of my own working in the medical field.
Yeah, and so I know you had to have seen some strange and some weird
Yeah. Oh yeah.
happenings.
Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah, there's just so much out there in the paranormal world, different aspects, and that's why I love doing this show and talking to different people, because everybody's also had different experiences, and
Exactly.
talking to people like you who go out and investigate and have, yeah, we capture EVPs and pictures, but they're always different from what other investigators have captured, and your
Yeah.
story is always different, and also the way that we perceive things is different as well. I mean, you can have, 5 people in the same room and they'll all have a different experience if you see a shadow person or something.
Exactly. Which brings me to that story about time warp. That was at the old hospital. That was another thing that happened at the old hospital. We were leading actually a big group tour, and I mean, we had a big group. We had 30 people there, so we had split everybody up into 10. And I had taken a group, and Sean had taken a group, and someone else on the team had taken another group, and we were going in different parts of the hospital, making sure that we couldn't interfere with their investigation. So we made sure that we were on the opposite end of the hospital, or down in the emergency room while someone was on 3, and just different things. We didn't want to cause any kind of problem with audio. So here Mark, here Sean and Matthew, and then the other one of the team members, Yoda, were taking 10 people through that blame second floor. It's the second floor, I'm telling you. So they start on one end of the second floor. And Sean has this thing that he likes to go lights out completely so that your eyes are adjusted to the dark, and it's easier to see some of the orbs and some of the shadowy things that happen up there. So he lets your eyes get accustomed to it for about 5 minutes, and then they'll start their walk and go through this second floor area. Well, he was going to take them down to the operating area, which is in the middle of the hospital. They started down on one end after their eyes adjusted and walked and walked and walked. And the next thing they know, they're at the far end of the hospital. They never passed where the elevators are in the center of the hospital. They never passed the pathway to the operating room. It just didn't happen. It did not happen. So they all three come down. They're all freaked out. They each tell me a different story. They were on the second floor together.
Right.
How can they each have a different story? Matthew says that the hallway never opened up. It was always, you could reach out and touch it from one side, step over a couple of steps, and then touch the other wall. It never opened up to the full 15 to 20 feet that it is wide where the elevators are. It never did that. Sean saw a shadow person, a boy, a little boy that he was watching at the far end of the hospital. The other two never saw that. Sean never realized that the hallway never opened up, like Matthew said. And then Yoda had a completely different story altogether. So if you read Time Warp, that's what that whole thing's about in the hospital. It's amazing how you can have your whole team together and everybody experience something different at the same time. It's incredible.
One theory on that I've heard from Mike Ricksecker, he's a researcher predominantly for shadow people. He brought up an interesting theory that we all vibrate on a different frequency. And so that's why we have different experiences. We could have a full body apparition in the same room, and we would all see it differently. Some of us would see it as a shadow person. Some of us would see it as a full body apparition. Some of us would see it as like a smoke. And just because we vibrate on a different frequency, we see things like that and experience things like that in a different way. So that's what it sounds like happened with the Time Warp situation.
It does. And that makes sense to me. Hearing it like that absolutely makes sense to me.
And that is somewhat based in real science too, of provable science. I wouldn't say real science, not that paranormal is not real science, but in provable science, because you have physicists who are doing these experiments about string theory and that, everything has a wavelength,
right?
Light and sound and everything is based on vibrations in our world. So why wouldn't that translate over to the paranormal of vibrating on a certain frequency? And since we each have our own frequency, experiencing that differently.
Yeah, and it would almost have to. And even though we vibrate on different frequencies, everyone's still connected to that universal energy. So it has to connect somehow, even though, it would be perceived slightly differently from another viewpoint. And that's very interesting. I like that.
Yeah, and I've talked about time slips a few times here on the show. A team that I investigate with as a guest investigator, Medics for Paranormal, Paula, one of their investigators, she had a time slip at Thomas' house, and we've talked about it here on the show when I've had them on. And I don't know, I keep hearing this from different investigators, and I'll get your take on this, but a lot of them are talking about the veil is thinning, and I think that's the only terminology that they kind of have for it. But there's a kind of a clash between the two worlds, and the paranormal is getting more predominant. So starting to hear more and more about these people having time slip incidents. And I don't know if it's people are more willing to come forward with them because the paranormal is so prevalent in our culture now, or if it's just happening more often.
I think it's happening more often because of everyone's interest in the paranormal. Because when you think about it, even 10 years ago, people weren't on board completely. They would watch Zach and well, some still do, and just laugh at what they were. Oh, did you hear that? Did you hear that? That's about all he says. Did you hear that? Did you hear that? So people tend to use it as entertainment, but there's all of us others that actually have gone on investigations and caught some form of some type of evidence, whether it be audio or video or even a picture of something that we can't quite explain. Or if we don't have clear evidence, it was something that we experienced and know it was odd. You can talk until you're blue in the face, but there are some people that aren't ever going to believe it. And then you've got others that are going out there going, you know what? If they can look for ghosts, so can I. So we've got these thousands and thousands and thousands of people now going out paranormal investigating. A lot don't know what they're doing. And that's a scary thing. So whenever you go to an investigation, one thing you should always know to do is to close your investigation. You should open it safely. You should close it. And not only close the investigation, but anytime you're talking to spirit, whether it be with a spirit box or copper rods or a pendulum or whatever it is you're using, even if it's the Ouija board, if you're brave enough to use one of those things, you've got to close it. Otherwise, spirit can keep popping through. And that's what I think has happened at a lot of these spots, such as the old hospital. We've had so many groups come in from all over the country. Some know what they're doing, some don't. Some close, some do not. And we've got these things that are still popping through these portals because there's more than one portal at the old hospital now. And things keep coming through it. And what is odd about that area, I mentioned that big graveyard that's close by. Matthew and I found, or actually Matthew figured it out. I don't know how much you know about ley lines and things like that, but things that are in a geometric pattern, say a straight line from one spot to the other, and then draw a line from that second spot to a third spot, and it comes out to be like a triangle shape.
Right.
Well, the old hospital and one funeral home and that big cemetery form one triangle in town, and another triangle is formed by the new hospital, another cemetery, and one of the old funeral homes. So you've got two funeral homes, you've got two cemeteries, and you've got two hospitals. And they're all forming, they're all in a triangular pattern.
Wow.
And those two patterns are overlaid on top of each other. So then you can talk about things like pyramids and all this stuff from way back. The Mayans, they built pyramids. That was done for a reason. They had power in them. Well, are things built, on these lines because they're more powerful?
Right.
I don't know. Does that make it more like a train track where spirits are just always coming through? I don't know. But it seems like there's more spirits at the old hospital now than when we first started investigating. And again, we come back to please, please, please tell your listeners to close their investigations. Please, please, please close those spirit box sessions. Close whenever you ask spirit questions. You gotta close it, or they're still going to pop through. And some of them you don't want to pop through.
Right. And also, unfortunately, at a lot of locations, because you have all these people coming through, you might have people with ill intentions too that come through to conjure something up or do something negative like that.
Exactly. Yeah, on purpose, just because they think that, oh, that'd be cool. And some people actually are wanting to talk to demons, and I don't want to. I don't want to talk to a demon. I don't want to come face to face with one. I don't. But you've got these other people saying, I'd be tough. I could be tough with it, or I could be friends with a demon. Why? Right. Why do you want to be friends? But, yeah, I think that a lot of it is, I don't want to say ignorance, but I don't know if it's fake bravado. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's, let's just see if we can do this and call something and conjure it. I don't know. I'll tell you one other thing about the hospital. Somebody formed a chalk circle on the western hallway of the second floor. Why? I'm not sure, but they have drawn the circle and contained it, and we don't know who did it, so we can't release it. We don't know why it was done. I will tell you one EVP I got on the second floor is I can usually feel something is close to me, so I usually say, well, come with me, follow me into the next room, or, say something to me. Okay, follow me now. Are you in this room with me? All right, come go with me. So just kind of follow me around. The EVP I got on that second floor said, most people don't let me out. Well, why?
Right.
So was that when it was the mental area, when people were having breakdowns or any kind of schizophrenia, or, because that was the area of the hospital. Maybe that's why they did the chalk circle. I don't know, but we can't release it because we don't know who did it or why or how.
Yeah. Also, one of the things I find weird is that some locations, those type of people are drawn, the ones that want to conjure things up and do nasty things, they're drawn to certain locations to where they leave other locations alone. And I've always wondered that because, like you're talking about, the hospitals drawn those type people. I know Waverly Hills had their problems with it before they became what they are now and cleaned the place up and all that. And then like Octagon Hall has, I know recently is, a couple of years ago had a problem with a team coming in and doing some stuff like that. And they had apparently a nasty entity that they had to deal with, from what I talked to Bear and Debbie that run the hall up there. But yeah, it just seems like certain locations draw those type people to where others don't. And I don't know why. Like Octagon Hall it's not ever been abandoned. It's been operated for a long time. And they've allowed lots of people come in there. I could see like an abandoned place, like, the hospital being abandoned, or Waverly Hills, because there's nobody there.
Right. But Octagon Hall, and it's full of history. And
right.
why would anybody do that? I don't get it.
Yeah. Well, and like you're talking about with the triangle with the hospital and having portals and that type of stuff, Octagon Hall, I mean, people have experienced every kind of phenomenon you could think about on their grounds, from cryptids to aliens to, all this different stuff. And they talk about the ley lines there too with Octagon Hall. So yeah, it's interesting, the properties and how these places are set up unintentionally. I don't think somebody intentionally built those, the graveyard, the hospital, and the funeral home in a triangle, or even like the new hospital, in a triangle.
Right. It's just weird that happened.
But yeah, I think a lot of it, can come down to the land as well, with Native Americans and what happened in the past. A lot of our cities and stuff are built where Native Americans settled because there's water or springs or certain things. Yeah. And we're kind of drawn to the same types of land because of what they offer. So you never know what happened there before and what kind of energy is going on to begin with.
And it probably was native. The hospital, the old hospital, is built on a hill, and we're not sure what's underneath that hill. It's a strange rise in the middle of town, and then this hospital is built on it. Well, why was this strange hill in the middle of town? What's under there? How long has it been there? Was it a native burial ground? We don't know. It happened so long ago and we probably will never know. But everywhere you turn, there's native situations going on. Hellstar Dam, I had one of the most outrageous experiences happen. We were asked to come, Matthew and I were asked to come and demonstrate some of our audio equipment, how to do EVP bursts and things like that. So we were set up in the crossroads of Hellstar Dam, and we had another group that was down the hall from us showing the public group that would come through how to use other pieces of equipment. But ours was strictly audio. So while we would wait, about, I'd say, 5 or 6 groups that came through each night. So while Matthew and I are sitting there, we start noticing some, there's a strange red mist that's coming around the corner. Not really sure what that is. And we just kind of watch it. It's undulating, and it's like coming forward, and then it would retract a little bit. Then it would come out a little bit more around the corner toward us, and then go back. And it was just the weirdest thing because there was no draft in the tunnel. So fast forward an hour or so, Matthew, we're taking a break. I'm sitting in Crossroads. Matthew goes, "Are you going to be okay by yourself?" And I said, "Sure." So I'm just kind of reviewing my audio while he goes. I think he went to the bathroom, outside to where the people met in the beginning to get tickets. And so he's gone maybe 10 minutes. And when he comes back in, he's across the hallway in the Crossroads, and he goes, "Sin, are you okay?" And I look up and I said, "Yeah, I'm okay. Are you okay?" And he says, "Yeah, come here." So I get up, walk the 15 feet across the Crossroads, and he says, "Turn around and look." And the red mist was completely engulfing my chair that I had been sitting in. I didn't know it. I didn't feel it. I was just unaware because I was working with audio. One EVP I got that night was musical almost. It was, is it a military cadence? Is it, I couldn't figure out what this thing was. It was a strange rhythm. It was a strange voice, and I couldn't figure it out. This is actually in that they're speaking on your listening book. You want to talk about the Hell's Bar Crossroads. My friend that does my covers and the illustrations in my book is a psychic, a very good friend of mine. And I talked to him, and he was actually doing seances that night over on the other side of Hell's Bar in the boat ramp area. And I said, "Mark, I've got an EVP from Hell's Bar that I never have figured out. Can you tell me what it was?" Didn't tell him anything else that had happened that night. Didn't think about it, really. And so he listened to it, and he said, "That's the Indians." And I said, "What Indians?" He said, "Those are the Indians that are living in the Hell's Bar area. They are the ones that were taken from that or made to move from that area when they built the dam. And they are so excited when someone actually is there to talk to them." So he actually drew them, and he said, "When I first saw them, they came out of a red mist." And I said, "What?" He said, "They came out of a red mist." He drew them. So those were the Indians that actually we caught on EVP, and they were just kind of checking me and Matthew out, seeing what we were doing, and just kind of excited we were there. But we didn't know it until just a few years later that I actually talked to Mark about it, and he was like, "Oh yeah, those were the Indians."
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a pretty awesome experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, Hell's Bar Dam, I've heard many investigators talk about hearing drums or chanting, and they never got the validation you did by talking to your friend, but they've always, thought that it was the Native American presence there.
And I would tell them, yeah, it most probably is.
Yeah, I love all the stories, especially around Tennessee. Tennessee is such a haunted state with so much history and so many places, and it's nice to see all these different places opening up to paranormal investigators.
I think so. Yeah.
And to deep dive into the history too. I love that part of it as well. And I think, because you don't have the paranormal without the history. And so that's why, we've been talking about it's, going with respect and that type of stuff when you go into investigate, because, these people they're still living in a certain way for the most part.
Right. Over and over and over again. Yeah. Some of them where they can reach out and talk to you, and some of them just residual. They're just living, videos over and over and over and over again. And it's just ingrained in the stone, the wood, or of the area, or the area itself.
Yeah.
So and sometimes it's kind of hard to figure out, is that purely residual, or is that an intelligent haunting?
Right.
But that's also the fun part too, trying to figure it out.
Yeah, and it all comes down to the one question that we all have, whether you believe in the paranormal or not, the one question of what happens when you die. That's what we're all trying to figure out.
Yeah. And again, we won't know.
Right.
You just don't know until it happens. And unfortunately, some of the spirits, you kind of feel sorry for them because they're still lost. They don't know if they died tragically, or there was a terrible fire or something like that, tragic accident. They might not realize what actually happened. So you have to be sensitive to that.
Yeah, it's always good to go in and be respectful. You're going to get those nasty spirits.
Mm-hmm.
I've said it many times on the show here. If you're nasty in life, you're probably nasty in death, but it doesn't mean it's something demonic or
Mm-hmm.
evil. It's just, people are grumpy in life, so why wouldn't there be grumpy spirits?
Exactly. But you can still be respectful of them, and please don't provoke them. Don't go in provoking. That's just a bad idea anywhere.
Yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly. I think that people do that because they're mimicking what they see on TV. It's going back to what you were talking about earlier, how people aren't educated. A lot of people aren't educated when they go out to do paranormal investigating. And I think that's part of the educating process of, know what you're getting into, and don't believe everything you see on TV, and don't mimic what you see on TV. You don't have to go out and do that to get evidence and EVPs. You attract more flies with honey than you do vinegar, as they say.
Exactly. And you learn so much more. And if someone in your audience is interested in starting to be a paranormal investigator, I really urge you to go on different hunts with different people. So go on those public hunts that are out there. Yeah, there's a ticket cost, but you learn so much. And every team does things just a bit differently. So don't go in with the attitude of, well, this team taught me this way, so that's the only right way. No, everybody has different ways they go about investigating. Right. Nothing is completely correct because everybody has things that they feel more comfortable doing. And that's good. That's a good thing. So when you can have a team that is made up of different individuals that approach things differently and know that there should always be a skeptic on that team so that they debunk anything and everything, because you try to debunk anything and everything before you say, yes, this could be a haunting. But just go out with different people, with different groups, learn as much as you can, read as much as you can, and just know that the paranormal is not an exact science. There's so much unknown out there. And if you ever meet somebody that says, oh, yeah, I know all there is, run. They don't. They don't. They might get you in a little bit of trouble. Go to somebody else and just stay open and understand that you need to always keep yourself safe. You need to always keep yourself grounded, whether that's with a meditation before you go on a hunt, or a cleansing shower where you throw some salt in your water. And, there's just different things you can do. Prayers, spiritual prayers before you go. Our team always starts with a prayer and ends with a prayer on an investigation. Saging. You can always smudge yourself or smudge your teammates, or have someone there that does crystal cleansing or whatever, but just always, always, always keep safety as your top priority. Know that all of this is unknown. You do not know what you're about to experience. Some nights are more active than others. And just because nothing happens this first night doesn't mean it's not going to happen the second and third night. Know that even going to a haunted location that you're used to, it's always going to be different. It's not going to be the same all the time. But just stay open and stay safe.
Yeah, and like you were saying, there are plenty of public investigations that people can go to, and if they're worried about ticket prices, let me just tell you, ghost hunting is an expensive hobby. So investigating is an expensive hobby. It is not cheap to do. Most of the places that we go into, especially public places, we have to pay lots of money to go into them to investigate, because that's part of their livelihood and part of keeping, like I was talking about earlier, keeping that history going. So these historical locations, yeah, they charge you to come in, but that goes to help them keep their doors open to preserve the history.
Exactly. And it's worth it.
Oh, yeah.
It's worth it. Some places don't charge as much. It just depends. Everybody's different, but the ticket price is worth it. Some better than others because, like I said, there's some places that are more fun to go to than others. There's like I have a bucket list, of places I want to go to, but I just haven't made it yet. Will I? I hope so.
Right.
But there'll be ticket costs involved. So anyway, just enjoy it and learn as much as you can.
So you said you're working on another book.
Mm-hmm.
Any idea when that'll be out?
I'm going to try to get it out by October. I would love to have it out for the Halloween season. I'm actually working on 2 books. This next one, It's Not Goodbye, Signs from Beyond, is the one I was telling you a little bit about our loved ones that speak to others on their deathbeds, or the signs that we see from our loved ones, or animals that kind of touch bases with us. That's that book. The second book I'm working on is darker. It's called Realm of Shadows, and it's some of the stranger, darker things that I have seen investigating, such as even at a couple of people's houses that were just a little bit too odd, a little bit too dark to be included in those first 2 books. So anyway, that's what is coming out. One of them I hope to have out in October. The next one will probably not come out until the spring.
Awesome. Well, I thank you for coming on and chatting with me today. It's been an awesome chat.
I have enjoyed you so much and would love to meet you in person and get you down here so you can go to the hospital with us. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, it would be a lot of fun. I would be honored to come in and do an investigation with y'all.
Well, we'd love to have you. Let's just get talking with that owner and see if he'll open back up anytime soon. That'd be great.
Right. All right, everybody. Today we've been chatting with Cyn Shrader Hill. First name is CYN. Look her up on Amazon. You can find her books on Amazon Kindle and wherever fine books are sold. I will definitely be looking forward to her 2 new books. And as always, thank you all for listening. Have a great day. Be safe out there. Join us next time for a new episode of The Unseen Paranormal. Until then, check us out on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or at our website, unseenparanormalpodcast.com. And don't forget to like, review, rate, and share with all your friends. Thank you to my friend Chris Lips for the awesome theme music. Listen to our theme song and more of his music at chrislipsmusic.com. And remember, some of the scariest things are unseen.